let's start talking methodology here, Jake.
Okay.
This you you mentioned that one of the traditions at Google is okay. We'll let you try it, and but you only have a certain amount of time. You tell the story of Priority Inbox. You were able to get a great engineer. What was her name from Google?
Yeah, Annie Chen.
Annie Chen.
Yeah, she's awesome.
And
yeah.
and she said to you, "Well, I'll give you 1 month, and if this doesn't work, I am out of here. I'm going off to
Yeah.
another project in Google." That's one of the things that's cool about Google is you can do that.
Yeah, people had a lot of autonomy, which was great if you
if you delivered.
had an idea and you could rally people to
Right.
to help you. But yeah, I only had Annie's help for a month. So another engineer had this really cool idea for sorting email, and I think it's something if you use Gmail or you use Inbox today from Google.
I love Priority Inbox.
Yeah, it's really cool. And when this guy named Peter Balsiger came up with this idea, and he was just experimenting with it in his sort of 20% time, and it was promising, but he didn't. We really needed to spend more energy on it to find out if it would work. And so I said, "Look, Annie, would you help us out?" And she said, "Well, I'll give you 4 weeks, and then we'll see. And if nothing comes of it, then I'm going to go on to the next thing." So that was actually a big moment for me, realizing what you could get done in a short period of time, because we hatched this plan to build a different version of Priority Inbox, of the basically the Inbox UI, every week for 4 weeks. And so each week we would launch a new version to a few test users, and it was actually like Annie was sort of hacking their inbox so that it like sort of a little fork, so that their front end of their inbox was showing their real email sorted into some different UI structure, and each week we could get feedback from them. And that crazy pace forced us to make decisions fast. It forced us to not worry about every single detail, but get things just real enough, just good enough that we knew we were getting good data back. And by the end of the month, we had hit on something that worked, that people were interested in, and we'd made it real enough that it stuck as a real product. And so that was that made me kind of rethink a lot of the things I'd been doing up to that point for team process, which were kind of basically variations on like a group brainstorm. And I realized there's something so much more powerful when you make something real, when you test it. And what we needed to do was combine that sort of idea of we're dropping everything and working on this one project. And that's kind of inherent in a brainstorm, and put some more structure on it and put a little bit more time in it so that we could actually finish with a tangible product, something that was tested. That was kind of the earliest moment of the sprint.
You say in the book that you looked at the results of your brainstorms. The brainstorms are fun. Everybody loves it. You get together, you shout out ideas.
Yeah.
There's no bad ideas. You put a lot of Post-it notes, or you write a lot of things on the whiteboard. But you say that at the end of the day, you looked at the ideas that came out of them, and you never used any of them.
Yeah, I mean, it was really, honestly, it was
That's
super embarrassing for
depressing.
me, because I had been running these brainstorms for other teams at Google, and we'd take a day and do these brainstorms, and they would just have tons of sticky notes, and people, it is like you said, it's fun to do it. And at some point, I was running one of these, and I was kind of like training like 100 engineers how to do this sort of classic brainstorm process, and this guy stands up in the middle of it, and he's like, "Wait, like, what proof do you have that this works? What evidence do you have that this works?" And it's actually like a really fair question. And embarrassingly, I was like, man, I've been kind of measuring whether people are satisfied with it, which made me feel good, but I hadn't been measuring the ideas in any way. And there was a simple way to do that. I just went back to all these teams, because I had been doing it for a few months, probably at that point, probably like a year and a half. Went back to those teams and looked at the ideas that came out, and looked at what they've been building. And it wasn't the stuff that came from the brainstorms. And so, there's a lot of research about the idea that group brainstorms are not as effective as individuals working alone. But I never believed it until I tried it for myself. And I found the same thing.
So it's funny because this at roughly the same time, this agile methodology kind of sprung up. A lot of programmers use it, and one of I've been through Agile a couple of times with different teams, and one of the things that come to mind for me, especially with Agile, is that process tends to overwhelm progress. That there's so much. It always worries me when I see, and we as geeks, we love process.
Yeah.
And we love, no, I'm sorry, we don't love process. We love systems. We're systems people. And I see people with getting things done methodologies or tomato methodologies, spending hours putting together 43 folders. And I've done this.
Yeah, yeah.
And we get all involved in the methodology, and then nothing happens. So I want to be careful. This is a wonderful methodology, but how do you make sure that it actually produces results?
Well, yeah, I'll tell you. I'll quickly tell you a story to kind of illustrate what a sprint looks like. So, not long ago, we did a sprint with Slack. So, the messaging software
Very nice.
company.
Yes,
They're
we
one of
love
our
them.
investments.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Slack has been tremendously successful with tech companies. That's where the bulk of their growth has
Absolutely.
come from companies who are already using some kind of messaging software or something, and they're switching over to Slack. But there's this huge potential market for them with companies who are using email. They're doing meetings, but maybe they're not as into tech as the sort of core Slack audience. And so as they were continuing to grow, they realized we could get a lot better at explaining the product out of the gate to people, to new customers, and helping them get started. Because if you think about that first person who uses Slack at a company, it's a big cliff to climb. You've got to figure out what Slack does, and then you've got to convince your team to try it and to really to stop using email for maybe a day and just use Slack so that you can experience what it's like, that's a lot to ask. So they knew they had to explain it better, and in the sprint, that was what we tried to tackle. Was that first experience with the product? What's it like when you first try it out? And so the team from Slack was, probably around 6-7 folks. We had, a couple product managers, a couple designers, we got engineers, marketers in the room. And what they did was to come up with a bunch of solutions, a bunch of competing solutions. So the way we do that is we have individuals work quietly and sketch in detail their own solution to the problem. So rather than a group brainstorm, it's kind of this individual quiet work. We did that. They made a decision about which of those approaches were the best. And what rose to the top were this really, sort of very ingenious idea that came from the CEO, Stuart Butterfield, who founded. Yeah. So he had this really intricate idea that was quite interesting for using sort of almost like a very simple AI to simulate a team using Slack. So you'd be talking to bots effectively, and using Slack even if you were just one person. And then another idea that was very detailed, but basically pretty straightforward. It would just kind of bring you into Slack and step by step explain this part, and just kind of slowly bring you up to speed with Slack. And so, normally what you'd have to do if you had those two ideas, and you'd never have those fully fleshed out, of course, in a normal conversation. You'd just be arguing about them in the abstract. We had them fleshed out, but normally you'd have to choose. We're going to do one or the other. And so in the sprint, what we do is actually make a prototype of both. And we give one of them a fake brand name and make it look sort of realistic. But the key to all of this on building the prototype and making those decisions quickly and all of these things is that on Monday of the sprint, you start off and you say, we're going to bring in 5 customers on Friday. We're going to do 5 one-on-one interviews. We're going to start recruiting those customers now. So we're going to schedule them now. And that deadline is there. Those people are coming in on Friday. We got to have something to show them. And, really the downside is you'll be embarrassed if you don't do it. But that's just enough. Just knowing that we all signed up to do this and these people are showing up, that ends up being this huge forcing function that makes you get real, makes you make those decisions. And then that also provides the test at the end. So that's really, I think, the big difference between this and a lot of processes is that you have to get real, and getting real makes all the difference.